the army as a unit, including a chief, reports to the cabinet. At the end of the day, we are asking them to deliver. If he doesn't, yes, he has to be removed.
The countdown to the rehabilitation of Hezbollah will begin. That's why we want to see the military effort continues in Iran and in Lebanon, and at the same time, we want to see the political efforts continue.
For the first time in decades, Lebanon and Israel held diplomatic talks in Washington, D.C. I'm David Makovsky of the Washington Institute. I'm happy to go on this journey with you. Hezbollah launched drones and rockets shortly after the beginning of the war in Iran. Millions of Israelis spent weeks stuck in bomb shelters, forcing many to temporarily evacuate from the north. The ensuing Israeli ground invasion of southern Lebanon, which aimed to establish a buffer zone, has displaced close to 1 million Lebanese civilians. And now we have reached a shaky ceasefire. Amid the chaos and distrust, Israel and Lebanon held their second round of negotiations on Thursday. The meeting was moved from the State Department to the White House, where President Trump announced that he talked to both sides, and the ceasefire was to be extended for an additional 3 weeks. The question at hand is whether it is possible to go from war to diplomacy. Is it possible for two countries who have never ended their state of war since 1948 to reach peace? Until this day in Lebanon, contact with Israelis is punishable by prison. To understand the stakes of these talks and if the ceasefire will result in enduring peace or whether it is just a prelude to another round of violence, I talked to leading experts from the U.S., Lebanon, and Israel. Due to the anti-normalization laws in Lebanon, we held the conversation separately, but back to back. Fouad Makhzoumi is a leading Lebanese member of parliament representing Sunnis in Beirut. Dr. Robert Satloff is the executive director of the Washington Institute. And Sarit Zehavi is the founder and president of Alma, an Israeli institute specializing in security challenges along the Lebanese border. Fouad Makhzoumi and Rob Satloff, thank you both for joining us on Decision Points.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Fouad, why don't I start with you? The Lebanese government has made some key steps recently, ranging from agreeing to open peace talks with Israel to saying that the Iranian ambassador in Lebanon should leave the country. What has led the Lebanese government to take these moves? How much is it tied to the war in Iran, and how supportive are the Lebanese people?
This is the first time in years that we have a government which was elected by us, was given the vote of confidence, and they are not part of the corrupted system of the past, which means that we believe that this one has more of a representation to the people. And the people, I think, they came to the decision that basically we need to move forward to support this government and to really reflect how we feel about the situation in Lebanon. Lebanon, as you know, we've been through wars that we had nothing to do with it, wars that were dragged into it by Hezbollah and Iran. And in the last government, even though we thought that Hezbollah should be totally outside the government, collectively we said, since it is a transition stage, let's make sure that you have 2 members of the cabinet in it. I personally was against it. And lately I have been demanding that the government should make sure that they will remove these 2 members of the cabinet from the government, because you cannot be a member of a government. The government collectively takes decisions, and very important decision that we've taken on the 5th or 7th of August and on the 2nd of March, yet they revolt against the government and they do not want to implement it. So my simple conclusion is that the people have decided to support this government. We believe the decisions that have been taken are historic. True, the implementation is not to the level that we expect it to be, but I think it is important after all these years, after the civil war in Lebanon, that we have such a government that's taking tough decisions against Hezbollah.
What do you think realistically could be achieved in these peace talks with Israel?
First of all, I think Lebanon, let's go back a little bit to history. All these arguments say that we're looking for a peace agreement with Israel. If we go back to history, in 1949, we signed the Armistice Treaty with Israel. And this was between the Republic of Lebanon and the State of Israel. In 1983, we had a draft that was agreed by both governments that the Syrians undermined. In 1996, We had an agreement with Israel, the April agreement, that both sides
Yeah.
were sitting there in agreement. In the year 2000, in the year 2006, in the year 2023, when we did the land demarcation, in the year 2004, and now. And if you go back to history, the Armistice Treaty created a very peaceful agreement between Lebanon and Israel from 1949 until 1967. Technically speaking, there is a history of calm and no hostilities with both countries. But except that, when the Syrians and the Palestinians first, and the Syrians and the Iranians tried to use Lebanon as a ground in order to settle the regional conflict with Israel, basically that's where Lebanon, we got into the situation where we are in today.
And by the way, you could mention also the Madrid peace talks of 1991. There were direct Israeli-Lebanese peace talks from 1991. Certainly through 93, there might have been some intermittent also ties until 96. In and of itself, it's not a first. I am curious, when you talk to Lebanese, what are their hopes for peace with Israel?
People want to live in peace. We see that the whole region is moving into a new Middle East, whereby everybody can live within prosperity and wealth and in trying to capitalize on our natural resources. Except that, because of the Iranian agenda, we have been taken to war so many times, which we have nothing to do with it. The Lebanese in general, even if you do all kinds of pollings and statistics, in excess of 75% of the people saying we want to go for peace. The two things that basically we have to be worried about. First of all, because of the existing law which has been abused by the deep state to threaten people of discussing the issue of peace with Israel, the 1955, what should have been the boycott law that was then attached to a penal code to make everybody acting as if they are traitor to the government, this needs to be repelled. But once that is done, I believe you're going to be seeing the majority of the Lebanese are saying enough is enough. We want to live in peace. The question is that the definition of peace varies from one group to the other. Because on one side, for us as Lebanese, we want to try to come to an agreement that our 10,452 square kilometers, basically they're under the sovereignty of Lebanon. We need a full demarcation between Lebanon and Israel. We need all pending matters that comes to the detainees and all of this to be given back. And once we do that, there is no reason why we shouldn't be signing peace in order to live forever in peace, whereby both countries can enjoy being neighbors, can enjoy a prosperity. And I believe there is a lot of possibility between Lebanon and Israel to develop because both think the same way as far as commercially, trading, business-wise, and I believe there will be a lot of opportunities.
Can you envisage, Fouad, people wonder if this parliament maybe cannot change the law because of the composition of the parliament, and now things have been extended for, I think, another 2 years. But could you see them at least saying we will not enforce the current law on no contacts because it's draconian?
Let's start with basics. I personally was against allowing Hezbollah to join the government because we expected that they will be acting the way that they are acting because this is what they have been doing with us from still after the civil war has been there. Now, the issue of the law, I think if you do a proper legal analysis, the law as was passed in 1955 based on the Arab League recommendation, it was purely a commercial and trade law, not allowing the Arabs/Lebanese, because now we're talking about Lebanon, to have any commercial dealing with Israel. To attach the penal code to it is some kind of innovation that was created by the deep state but if you really look at the text of the law, they have no right to incriminate anybody. Okay, this is one. Secondly, if we want to go one step further, today our president announced that we're going for direct peace negotiations with Israel. But it's public. We did that. In the year 2000, we did that. In the year 2006. So are we saying that the president is breaking the law? Look, David, the deep state and the Hezbollah are trying to incriminate people. We collectively have to accept that this is behind us now. Let's move forward and not stop at these details that they are using it against us.
Rob, I want to go over to you, if I may. And you have been somewhat critical of the Trump administration in the past, that it really hasn't invested the time or resources into promoting Lebanese-Israeli peace. How encouraged are you by the fact that talks have began, and what's realistic in your view in terms of progress for these talks?
Look what happened the moment Donald Trump called and spoke with Joseph Aoun, the president of Lebanon. Within minutes, there was a ceasefire that Trump basically imposed on Israel. Probably Netanyahu was not thrilled with this, but within minutes that happened. And we have President Aoun agreeing to this very forthright statement. The two countries are not at war. The two countries are working together to address their common interests and their common threats. I'm very happy that the Secretary of State is the key American actor. This is all good. And so I believe with more American involvement, the chances for real progress goes up.
And Fouad, in terms of confidence-building measures between the Lebanese and Israeli people, are there ideas that you think would have particular resonance in Lebanon?
The elephant in the room is Hezbollah. It's fine to be talking about a potential treaty and all of this. On both sides, we need to deliver on disarming Hezbollah, not only on the combatant side, but there are other issues related with Hezbollah. So unless we are in control of this dossier, why would Israel accept to be sitting with the Lebanese government to come to that? Today, as far as I'm concerned, Hezbollah, we have been told by the government that they disarmed Hezbollah in south of Litani. Obviously, what we have seen after the 2nd of March is that it's a scandal because it's truly most of the rockets were fired from the south of Litani. But let's now look at the positive side. What can we do first to tell the United States and the international community that we are serious about disarming Hezbollah? Let's start with Beirut. And in my op-ed piece in The Economist I have published about a month ago, I gave a very clear 5-point plan in order to disarm. Remember, before Beirut, we had 2 divisions of the army that were there. This is in good times. Today, what we heard is that they have sent a brigade, which I don't see it. Let's start with that. If we can prove to the international community, including the United States first, is that we are willing to implement the mechanism that was agreed to implement in south of Litani, whereby the mechanism will inform the army where are potential threat, and the army has a division in Dahi, in south of Beirut, and one in Beirut. This way, then we are telling the world and we're telling the Lebanese people that the government is willing to take that tough steps in order to stop these attacks, but against delivering what we have promised the world to deliver. Secondly, we have been, for us, Hezbollah is not only combatants and arms. Hezbollah is a whole financial network. And a lot of experts from the United States and people close to the administration have said it clear that between the crypto that is being handled by Hezbollah to the tune of $1 billion every year, between the cash that's coming from some neighboring countries to the tune of $1 billion, this shows that we are not doing enough as government. We need to show the international community this is decision by the cabinet itself. It has nothing to do with the army. It has nothing to do with Hezbollah. It is our decision to do it, and we are not doing enough on that issue. Third, and it's the issue of allowing them to get away with teaching the ideology of Wilayat al-Faqih in their schools, which is now running in the tens of thousands of people. And in order to be able to do this, to control the financial elements and the reason why Hezbollah is able to survive all of these things, we need to control the ports, the airports, the financial system. Where is the financial system that the government has promised the international community they want to do it? They didn't do anything about it. Hassan, and for people who don't understand, Qard Hassan is the equivalent of a microcredit program, but actually it is a religious microcredit program that Hezbollah tries to finance it. And basically it's functioning as an illegal bank in Lebanon without a license. What did the government do? Very little. Israel came and bombed few of these locations, but Qard Hassan is a bank with so many branches. So it's not a matter of bombing few. So no, we as a government has to be doing more in order to show that we are serious about implementing the international law, which then will encourage Israel to say, then I'm willing then to help the army and to ask the United States to help the army in order to build their capabilities, okay? Then there is a demand on Israel to withdraw from south of Lebanon because the situation as it exists today, it will be very difficult to sell it to the people that we are really moving towards achieving a treaty of peace.
So there's no doubt the idea of starting in Beirut has a lot of appeal. People will want to know, will it go into the Dahya, for example, the Hezbollah neighborhood, where Israel has repeatedly bombed? Because showing control of the capital would also mean Israel would not get near there if it really was taken care of. And what do you do when you have a chief of staff of your Lebanese armed forces who makes that unity above all. And who's going to do this in the Lebanese armed forces to carry out the will of the government? And I hope you feel it has parliamentary support, some of your ideas. So how do you see this happening in practice with the current leadership of the Lebanese armed forces?
I have to remind you that the army is a unit that reports to the government. And if there is the political will and we show solidarity between the people and the government, the army has no chance. At the end of the day, whether it's a chief of the armed forces or any general there, he's an employee of the government. And if the political will is made clear to everybody, I doubt if anybody can be challenging it. But remember, after the cessation of hostilities and after the Civil War, the Syrians created that perception that the army does not have to report to the politicians. With this government, then no, we are insisting that this is the case. The chief of the army or any general to that effect, all what we're asking him, implement what the government has decided. So I believe we need to make sure that this is done. I believe with the solidarity of the parliament and the solidarity of the people and the members of the parliament, that will give more strength to the government to start pushing for that. And I believe the prime minister is definitely saying all the right things. The president is saying all the right things. Now, we just want to make sure that this will be enforced and not to be allowed explanations and explaining to us some kind of a civil rivalry. First of all, civil conflict will happen if there are two sides in the community in Lebanon, outside the government, decide to go to civil war. Now we have the majority of the people supporting the army, supporting the government. So it means this idea that we're going to be pulled into a civil war, it's only a propaganda by Hezbollah and by Iran. Because in reality, who's going to be fighting the government? All of us are going to be supporting the government. I believe there is a chance, okay, that if we all collectively going to be pushing it, and I agree with Rob, the sequence of events that it is there is no other justification why the army can play anymore, that we have to be careful and unit. Because at the end of the day, we are looking for accountability.
Do you think President Aoun, who himself was once the head of the Lebanese armed forces, that if the chief of staff did not fulfill the government's wishes, that the president would have him removed? Should he be removed? Can it happen?
Remember, the president is the chief of the armed forces, but the army as a unit, including the chief of the army, reports to the cabinet. So yes, if the cabinet and the president decides that he can be removed, he can easily be removed.
Do you think it should happen?
At the end of the day, we are asking them to deliver. If he doesn't, yes, he has to be removed.
Let's just talk for a moment about the south of Lebanon. And Israel has gone into what's called now a yellow line, not always up to the Litani River. So, Fouad, how do you see this view that Israel feels it has no choice but to do a security zone? It can't take a risk after October 7th. It needs that buffer zone if the Lebanese armed forces is not there. What do you think about this?
I cannot condone the fact that there should be an occupation for Lebanon. This is, for me, it's a no-no. But I understand that after 7th of October 2023, Israel is saying, since the Lebanese government is not performing well, since the Lebanese army were not able to remove the arms of Hezbollah, I have no choice but to go through that route. What we are saying is that both sides do not trust each other, okay? And actually, it is not the Lebanese government. It's Hezbollah that is trying to pull the Lebanese government into a conflict with Israel. So we need to have these confidence-building measures that we have to do it. And if we can start with Beirut and show the international community that we can perform, that will then help us to go back to the United States, which is the main supporter for our armed forces, and say, let's work with you on a budget, let's work with you on a way to reinforce the Lebanese army to be able to be pushing south in order to take over from Israel part by part in order to have this confidence built between both. At the end of the day, we hope and we wish that the Lebanese government is going to be implementing the decision in according to what we are discussing now as our roadmap, okay? And at that point, if we believe that the Israeli side are willing to go that step-by-step process by building the confidence, I believe then it will be very quickly that the two presidents, the president of Lebanon and the prime minister of Israel, can sit and shake hands, because then we have agreed that both nations are willing to work together for a lasting peace, rather than to allow Hezbollah or any other party to that effect outside the state that will be allowed to draw us into another war.
Rob, are there incentives, disincentives that the Trump administration could do that could facilitate this disarmament that we all agree is critical?
My view is that the United States should be much more explicit with the government of Lebanon by offering a very significant package of aid and support to the Lebanese armed forces, including salary support, because I think we should recognize that a Hezbollah fighter gets paid by Iran more than the government of Lebanon is able to pay a soldier in the LAF. It's real.
Is the truth Hezbollah is paid in dollars, I believe, and the Lebanese soldier is paid in a lira that has been devalued greatly.
But for every incentive, there needs to be a disincentive. Namely, this enticement, this carrot, goes equally with a big stick, which is failure to perform will be cut off to the LAF. And we will do our best to make sure that the French or the Germans or the British or the Saudis or whoever do not provide a backdoor support.
Let me ask you both a final question, and that is another elephant in the room, so to speak, is Iran. To what extent are these issues linked? When the ceasefire was imposed, as Rob noted, by President Trump, it was clear it was linked to him wanting to renew talks in Pakistan with the U.S. and the Iranians. Fouad, why don't I start with you, and then Rob, for your thoughts.
We thank President Trump and his administration for decoupling this issue of the cessation of hostilities and the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel away from Iran, because Iran wanted to capitalize on this point, which we all disagreed with. Now, there is no doubt that the United States, with the help of our friends in Saudi Arabia, have been very effective in trying to get this process dissociated and decoupled from Iran. Hezbollah is an Iranian group working under the instruction of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. As you know, even the Prime Minister has announced that there are thousands that have moved in since 2006, and at the moment we don't know where they are. So today, Iran and Hezbollah is one, and we need to make sure that no peace talks is going to reflect a winner for Iran in Lebanon so that it can be capitalized on by Hezbollah. But let me go back to the question that you first addressed. The only party that we believe can force Lebanon and Israel to sit and come to a reasonable working format is the United States, nobody else. Okay, because at the end of the day, Israel is willing to listen to the United States. We are willing to go along because we believe that's the only savior we have.
Rob, can you talk to us about how to decouple those two things?
Tehran does not control the diplomacy that is going on under U.S. auspices. This was a Lebanese sovereign decision. To their great credit, they stood down Hezbollah, which said, don't do it. They stood down Hezbollah, which said, don't go to Washington. They stood down Hezbollah, which said, don't have this working relationship with Israel and under the U.S. auspices. We should recognize that. Very positive. We should build on it. Yes, nobody is blind. There's a context in which everything is happening, but we should celebrate the first bloom of real sovereignty that we've seen from Beirut in a long time.
Thanks to Fouad Makhzoumi in Beirut and Robert Satloff in Washington. Now I'm joined with Sarit Zehavi from northern Israel. Sarit Zehavi, thank you so much for joining us today on Decision Points.
Hi, good to be with you.
As we're recording this, there's a ceasefire going on between Israel and Lebanon. There's a lot of skepticism, and even that this ceasefire is unpopular, especially in the north, that has suffered at the brunt of Hezbollah rocket attacks. And almost a feeling that the U.S. snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Do you really believe Israel was militarily close to defeating Hezbollah?
I don't think so. Here in Israel, we understand it takes a long time, and we understand it's a combined effort of many players. And I want to explain. There is a difference between the different point of views here. Like the point of view of the IDF is a more tactical and operative. And if you look from this point of view, clearly what the IDF is doing in Lebanon is important, and it's amazing, and it's a huge military achievement. And they took all the area from the border 10 kilometers into Lebanon to secure the communities from options of infiltration of terrorists or a direct shooting of missiles that we cannot intersect. This is very important. But on the other hand, when you look from strategic point of view, it is clear that you cannot solve the problem once and for all only with IDF maneuver. It takes much more than that. First and foremost, as long as there is still Islamic Republic in Iran, there is still money, training, and weapons to the hands of Hezbollah. And they will prioritize Hezbollah over their own people in Iran. Once this is over, if they will survive this, Hezbollah again will gain money and again will rebuild its military power. So I think it's a combined effort that should be handled by the military effort of Israel, a Lebanese effort, which without it, this process is not going to succeed. A Lebanese effort, politically, economically, and militarily. And I think that's the key point that we are missing. The Lebanese are full of nice statements, historic negotiations with Israel, but actually very little deeds, if ever, against Hezbollah.
Where are the people of the North? Are they going to come back to their homes? What can the government do to restore normalcy for northern Israel?
To go back to normality will probably take a while. And to be honest, as much as we want to go back to normality, if we will go back to normality on Sunday and the war will not be resumed neither in Iran nor in Lebanon, this normality is living on the edge of hell. The countdown to the rehabilitation of Hezbollah will begin. That's why we want to see the military effort continues in Iran and in Lebanon. And at the same time, we want to see the political efforts continue. I totally agree with Makhzoumi about the role of the Lebanese state over here. But I want to say something about the Israelis. And in opposed to last time in 2023, when we were surprised and IDF was not here to protect us, it took a day or two until they actually went up, and much more than that to clear those areas from next to the border. And it took a year and a half until we were able to bring the 60,000 Israelis back to their communities, and not all of them came back. This time, there was no evacuation, which means that only those who didn't come back in 2024 are still outside of the region. And the vast majority of the residents here stayed in the past month and a half in the north, under fire, under attacks, having seconds to get to the bomb shelter. No schools, hardly can go to work if there are no schools. And yet we did it. We are here, including myself. We stayed here and we were not evacuated. I hope that all these processes will come together as I described to bring us back to normality, but I do believe that it will take a while.
How important do the people in the North feel that having a security zone in southern Lebanon, that the IDF is there and the ceasefire was done and it didn't mean Israel pulls out?
First, residents of the North demanded that there will be a security area. The fact that IDF is between us and the enemy is highly important. That's the main lesson of October 7th. But it's not a situation that we made it an ideology that we have to be in Lebanon no matter what. We all hope that we will not have to be in Lebanon and this problem will be solved by the Lebanese. And I'm saying that because we have bad memories from the security zone in the past, in the 80s and in the 90s. And clearly we saw back then that it gave security to the civilians, but it didn't for the soldiers who were there and were attacked by Hezbollah constantly. And that's why we all understand that the security zone is effective in protecting the civilians. By the way, it's also important to preserve it because it's a clear message to the Lebanese and to Hezbollah that we are here because you didn't do what you had to do. Because Lebanon didn't disarm Hezbollah for 20 years. We waited for 20 years and it just didn't happen. And that's why we had to get there. And the soldiers, again, saying that weapons are being found, that Hezbollah is there, the tunnels are there. So there is a lot of work to clear those areas from weapons in order to protect us.
Do you worry that they will use the Israeli ground presence and say it's an occupation? Are you worried that they will use this as a rallying cry to increase attacks on Israeli soldiers and maybe even fire on the north?
We were not in Lebanon for 20 years. We unilaterally had withdrawn from Lebanon for 20 years. And what we got from Hezbollah in Lebanon is more buildup of its military capabilities against us. I want to remind our listeners that in September 2024, when we entered into Lebanon after 11 months that we were under fire of Hezbollah, I personally was under fire of Hezbollah over here in the north. And finally, in September, IDF entered into Lebanon. What we found is full deployment of Hezbollah and full preparedness of Hezbollah to launch an invasion to Israel. Actually, Hamas copy-paste Hezbollah plan to invade to northern Israel and to slaughter us over here in the north. We all believe over here in the north that it was a miracle that Hezbollah didn't enter. We don't have a professional, intelligent explanation of how it happened, except for the fact that people are saying that Nasrallah was surprised by Sinwar, but actually the plan was there together. The surprise was only with the specific timing and not with the principle of launching an attack, a combined attack from various fronts against Israel. This was planned in Tehran. This was planned by the heads of Quds force in the region. And Hezbollah was fully prepared for that, and it was proven that it was fully prepared for that. So to say that the presence of the IDF in Lebanon will be an excuse to Hezbollah to attack us, yes, it will be an excuse to Hezbollah to attack us. They are already on a daily basis, including this morning and this evening, attacking our forces in Lebanon. But at the same time, it is just an excuse, and we shouldn't buy it as an excuse because eventually the basic ideology of Hezbollah is the loyalty to the Islamic Republic values of Iran. And one of these values is the destroyment of the state of Israel. So we shouldn't buy the Hezbollah propaganda and use this to give ourselves excuses of how come it's not working. It is not working because Lebanese government didn't disarm Hezbollah according to the agreements that were made 20 years ago. It's as simple as that.
We've been talking about the unpopularity of the ceasefire, how Trump seeks to impose this. But on the other hand, Hezbollah could not have been happy that peace talks have started with the government of Lebanon and Israel. There'll be some people who say, yes, linkage has become more pronounced between the issue of Iran and Lebanon. But at the same time, this could not be seen as a win for Hezbollah. What's your view?
I'll simplify this for you, because I think that we are in the middle of the process and not in the end of the process. We still don't know how these two ceasefires will end up. But in general, if Hezbollah will survive this and the agreement that will be made in the end will enable it to rebuild its military power, so Hezbollah won. I just want to add something. I didn't believe that the Iranians will insist on having a ceasefire with Hezbollah as well as a condition to the ceasefire between Iran and the United States. I thought that they are under huge pressure, which will bring them to sacrifice Hezbollah. And they didn't do it. They insisted on having both ceasefires. And this is a dangerous precedent, because this means that if we will attack Hezbollah for any reason whatsoever, or violations of any agreement, now the Iranians can attack, the ships in Hormuz or whatever and violate the ceasefire agreement over there. And that's why I'm saying that the only way to truly end this, the American way to end this, is to bring to the end of the Islamic Republic. And I'm sorry, that's the only way. And I understand that it's going to take a while. I truly understand it's a process. It may take a few months. It will bring to chaos in Iran. There are a lot of risks around that as well. I'm totally aware of that. But if we will not go all the way, it will be very difficult for the Lebanese government to do what we want them to do. And we all agree that should be done over there. And by the way, the tweet of President Trump that Israel is prohibited from attacking, again, it's also very important because we are operating in South Lebanon, but we are not operating in Beirut anymore. And we hardly operated in the Bekaa anyway. So this means that over there, Hezbollah is in general doing whatever it wants, rebuilding its power in those places, which again, it's going to pose a lot of difficulties on the Lebanese government against Hezbollah, because if we are not doing our part, which is bombing Hezbollah anywhere in Lebanon, it will be more difficult for the Lebanese government to do its part.
Thank you again for tuning into this episode of Decision Points. A big thank you to my guests, Robert Satloff, Fouad Makhzoumi, and Sarit Zehavi. Please be sure to rate and review us where you listen. It helps us to build our community. And also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. There's a lot to unpack. Until next time, I'm David Makovsky.